Good evening. Welcome to the annual Youth Advisory Council talk show. I am Tiandra Grant, Youth Advisory Council President, and we're excited to bring to you issues that are important to the youth, not only in the local area, but nationally. Today, we will explore bullying and the effect it has on those affected. I'm happy to introduce our facilitator for tonight's talk show, Ms. Tiasha Johnson, advisor who will join us right after this.
Yes, Vanessa.
A phosphate group, deoxyribose, and a nitrogenous base. Adenine, guanine, cytosine. Thymine if it's DNA.
And thymine is replaced with uracil if it's RNA.
Very good. Okay, so we're going to move on. So we all know DNA's a long fiber. It looks sort of like a hair, only thinner and longer. They stick together and then they sort of twist. Proteins then attach to the DNA and help the strands coil up into a polymer the cell can quickly divide. So what's the difference between DNA and chromosome? Chromosome is made of DNA and proteins attached to it. There are 23 pairs of chromosomes in a human cell. One of these pairs
Oh my God! Vanessa, what's the matter, baby?
I assume most of you've heard the various rumors about what happened to Vanessa Snyder.
I heard she slit her wrists.
She shot herself.
She took an overdose.
I guess I'm just wondering if any of you have any feelings about what she did.
Vanessa and I have been friends since our whole lives, and I just wish I could have done something to help her.
That is such crap.
Excuse me, Emily.
Stacy drove Vanessa to it. She humiliated her. She practically ran her out of school, and everybody knows it.
What? That is such a lie. You've known her, what, 5 minutes? Vanessa and I are incredibly close.
Yeah, close enough to kill her.
All right, that's enough.
Welcome back. I'm Tiasha Johnson, the facilitator for this evening. Today's talk show is being co-hosted by Columbus Against Bullying, an organization designed to bring awareness and solution on a senseless issue. Today's panelist includes Lisa Jenkins, the chair of Columbus Against Bullying. We have Danielle Forte, the assistant district attorney. Dr. Takelia Nelson from the Muskogee County School District, and Corporal Joseph Copeland, Community Relations Officer with the Columbus Police Department. Let's get started with sharing some bullying statistics for 2016 through 2017, and there we will hear from each one of our panelists. 15% of all bullying is cyberbullying. 63% of bullying victims do not report it. 160,000 students stay home every day just to avoid being bullied. 25% of all kids are bullied by other children in school. In 2016, there was a 7% increase in bullying from 2015. Most bullying happened in the school restrooms. Ms. Jenkins, let's start with you and your view from Columbus Against Bullying.
Hello, everybody. Columbus Against Bullying was started because we saw a need. Children were asking for help. Children were not being kind. So what we've decided to do, thanks to Dr. Nelson, is build a culture of kindness. And what we're going to be doing is going throughout the community going out to the community, talking to them, educating, bringing awareness, doing events, and we're going to try to help everybody learn what bullying is, what cyberbullying is, and what even assault is, because not all bullying is, not everything is a bullying. It sometimes goes to assault as well. And so our goal here is to help you become heroes in your schools to stand up to bullying.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Corporal Copeland. How does law enforcement deal with this, particularly when we have officers in almost every school?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, thank you for allowing Columbus Police Department to be here. Thank you for inviting us out. But as far as how we address bullying, it's one of those things where if we see a crime that's happening, we definitely take care of that, any criminal aspect of the nature. But in order for us to really combat the bullying, it's one of those things where it has to be a holistic type of approach to it. Our children, I tell them often, when bullying happens, adults are not present. And if they're not saying something as a community, as a middle school community, there's nothing we can do to combat it, but they have to say something, break the silence, I always tell them. But just to answer your question, but we see a criminal act, no doubt we address it right on the spot.
Okay, thank you. Now, Mrs. Forte, how is it handled when it reaches the DA's office, and how many of these cases do you actually prosecute?
Well, I am the juvenile court prosecutor here in Muskogee County, and we get the case when the kids decide not to be so nice and when the bullying escalates to the level of a crime. When it escalates to a level of a crime, you have the officers that bring the charges, and then they bring it to the DA's office, and we prosecute it in juvenile court. We deal with a lot of cases, I would say between 80 to 90%. In the school districts where you have bullying that has escalated to the level of a crime. You have the simple battery where it becomes physical. You have the simple assault. Sometimes it's aggravated assault, and et cetera. It just keeps escalating. And at that point, they come before me, and I prosecute it, and I bring it before the juvenile court judge. And depending on whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, they can get probation. They can get 30 days, maybe upwards of 60 days in detention. But if it escalates to an aggravated assault, what we call a designated felony, they're looking at 3 to 5 years in detention. So we do prosecute, we take it very seriously. Unfortunately, if it's on the basic level where it's just taunting in words, that's not a crime. But once it becomes a crime, we take it very seriously.
Okay, thank you. Now, Dr. Nelson, we know that most, if not all, bullying begins in the school systems. What are the policies when reported or determined that someone is being bullied? What happens to the perpetrator, and how is the victim protected?
Great question. Well, there's a 4-step process that we use within Muskogee County School District. The first step is, of course, investigating the incident, and we make sure that that incident is looked at within 72 hours. That's done at the school level with the building level administrator or his or her designee. The second step is to definitely notify the parents of both the student who is considered the perpetrator or the bully, as well as the student that's the target. So both parents are notified. We make sure that when we're talking and investigating, that the students are not in the same room. That is very important. And we also make sure that we document within our student information system any incidences of bullying, like she's mentioned, whether it is cyberbullying, emotional, physical, verbal. All incidences are reported in Infinite Campus. The next step that we do is very important, and that's, unfortunately, is where the discipline or consequences come in place based on the investigation. And that consequence or discipline could be, it's age appropriate, which means we look at the student and what's going on to determine if it's taunting, is it teasing, is Do we need to include counseling as a part of the process, or do we need to indeed have a stricter consequence? And that could be anything from in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, or all the way up to tribunal, which is going to the alternative setting. Now, the very final stage, which is probably the most important, is the follow-up piece. And that's to make sure that not only the person who is considered the bully, but also the bystanders, as well as the students who are the target, that everyone they're on our radar, that we're not doing just prevention, we're doing intervention, as well as what we call postvention. And that's to make sure that we have some support in place for all parties involved. And one of the things to keep in mind is if there's 3 incidences of bullying, and it doesn't have to be the same type of bullying, but if there's 3 incidences without documented and investigated throughout the school year, that is a reason to go to tribunal.
Okay, we have heard from each one of our panelists. After this commercial break, we will have questions from our audience. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back. We've had an opportunity to hear from our experts. Now we'll give the opportunity for the Youth Advisory Council members to ask questions to our panelists. We ask that you come to the microphone, which is here in the center, and give your name, grade, and school before you ask a question. Any volunteers? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Daniel Nazario. I'm in 6th grade and I go to Aaron Cone Middle School. My question is bullying have any relation to peer pressure?
Any takers?
I'll take that one. I'm actually, just to let you know my background, I am the director of school counseling as well as school social work in the district. And to answer his question, absolutely. One of the things that's important is that we understand, and that's why I say I included bystanders at the onset, because as friends, it's important that we not just see something happening, but we also say something to a trusted adult. As peers, it's important that we do stand up and we do voice our concerns to the trusted adult in the building or even your parents as you get home. One of the things that I do want to stress is there's a real simple 3-step acronym, and it's ACT. A is just simply, as a friend, acknowledge that something is truly going on and not just turn a blind eye, but also care enough about that friend to do something, and that doing something is the T, and that is to tell the trusted adult. So yes, it is definitely correlated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question.
Hi, I'm Sanaya Hood. I am in 10th grade, and I go to Shaw High School. My question is, if someone is new to an area and like they just moved and they don't really know anybody and they happen to be getting bullied, how would you go about, if you're that person, how would you go about, I don't know, getting help if you really don't know anybody?
I would think, I would ask everybody, please, welcome your students, welcome the children into your schools. If there's somebody new coming, reach out to them. We all can look around and see what's going on. You all hear it, you see it, and you can feel it. There's stress going on, and somebody knows what's going on. If you're new to the school and you don't know what it is, go to the counselor, go to a teacher. Find somebody, like I said, the government, student government, anybody like that, anybody, sports, whatever you can, find somebody to reach out to. But I ask every one of you from now on, start looking in your schools, start listening, and if you see it or hear it, the only ones that can stop the bullying will be you. Because like I heard a while ago in a production on those Bully Zone, there will not be a hero coming to the school to save you. You have to do it yourself.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Megan Archibald. I'm a 12th grader at Hardaway High School. My question is, why do you believe students don't report bullying and rather suffer in silence?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of the question.
Why do you believe students don't report bullying and rather suffer in silence?
I think, and if I can chime in, that it has a lot to do with the peer pressure. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to be the sole voice against something that is negative or that you see that is wrong. And so they do suffer in silence because they are afraid. And it goes back to Ms. Nelson's point as far as maybe going to a counselor. If you can't go to your parents, finding an adult to divulge and confide in order to get some help and get some assistance with what's going on, as opposed to suffering in silence. But usually, if you are uncomfortable with your peers and you think that they might look upon you negatively, that might impact that person to suffer in silence. And I just stress what's already been stated by the other panelists, that you find an adult or someone that you can confide in, if it's a church or social organization, someone that you can confide in order to get the help that you need so that you don't suffer in silence and you can turn it around.
And Dr. Nelson?
Yes. And I also would like to add, in many of your schools, and if it's not located in your schools, you as leaders, I do challenge you to take this back. We have what we call is a confidential box at many schools where you can write your information. You don't have to add your name, but if you have concerns, you can write that information down. It is a locked box that the administrator or administrator designee has the key to, and they check daily. So ask your counselors, ask your principals if they do indeed have a box. If not, I encourage you to get it started in your schools. Also, we do have a bully hotline in Muskogee County School District, and that's 706-748-2276. The number again is 706-748-2276, and you can report your concerns anonymously.
Can I add something to that,
Yes, ma'am.
please? Also, on social media, cyberbullying is one of the biggest things that we're getting into. If you notice a friend is making remarks, or that you can tell they're hurting, or you see bullying, that's your number one thing right now. This is a great tool, but it's also our worst enemy. Look and see what's happening and let an adult know Johnny, Susie, Billy is having problems, because Johnny, Billy, Susie may not say it, but you can.
And if I can add one thing, on the legal side, sometimes when we're prosecuting, when the cases are really, really dangerous and they've risen to the level of a crime, your silence is the worst thing that can happen for us in order to prosecute and stop the bullier from bullying you. And so that's why if you reach out, we also have victim witness advocacy that we have in the DA's office that you can go to. You can talk with the victim witness advocates. They can accompany you to court, because silence is maybe the worst thing to stop bullying. If you're silent, then the bullying progresses, it escalates, and it gets to a level that is very dangerous and I would just say very dangerous to the community. And so your silence is something that we all should, as leaders, should stop and make sure we speak up and have a voice, particularly, and it takes a lot of courage, but if you speak up, we can do what's necessary to at least stop that person from bullying and maybe stop bullying from being so prevalent as it seems to be during these current times.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is happening to someone.
I need your name, school, and grade.
I'm Jasmine. I go to Rainy McCullers, and I'm 11. Okay. Oh, and I'm in 6th grade. So this happened to somebody that I know. So if somebody's bullying you, and you tell a teacher or an adult, and they don't do anything, and then you tell another one, but they try, but nothing happens, what do you do then?
Okay. Dr. Nelson?
I will answer that question. You do have, with your parent or with a caregiver, We have the Division of Student Services that's located at the Public Education Center. If you come to us within that building and you make that report, we will definitely start the investigation. So if you're reporting to an adult in your building and you don't feel like anything's happening, please feel free to come to the school district's building, and we do have a process in place where we will hear you and we will definitely follow up and investigate on your behalf.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Evan Smallwood, and I go to Veterans, and I'm in the 8th grade. And so you were talking earlier about how a lot of bullying takes place in the restroom. So since many precautions used elsewhere can't be implicated here, how can this be handled?
Well, first I want to say, if you don't mind, there are actually 6 places that bullying starts or happens. The hallway, the bathroom, the playground, the bus, cafeteria. I think that's all. I think that was all 6 of them there are. And all of those are in view of somebody. They may not be in view of the teacher. They're not going to bully in front of a teacher. I'll tell you that right now. Nobody's going to bully in front of a teacher. It's going to be in front of you. And in the bathroom, honestly, sometimes you may need to go to the bathroom in pairs. You can go in and check on them. And if you go into the bathroom and something happens, I don't care what it is, you go find an adult right there. You have to find an adult when it happens in the bathroom, because that's the one place you will never find cameras or an adult stand there with you. So I would ask that now. You may have something else to go to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sydney McCrae, and I'm a junior at Columbus High, and my question is, can bullying be a civil rights violation?
Well, you do have the bullying with the LGBT community, and I do know that there are some laws that are coming down the pike. That's a difficult question. It's a good question, but it's difficult because on some levels, whether or not it's a civil rights violation may be on a case-by-case basis, whether you're a protected class. The problem is usually it's by another minor, a juvenile. Usually when you have those types of violations, it's usually someone in a position of power. You would probably have a better case if it was a teacher that was violating your rights in some shape, form, or fashion. It's kind of a little bit more difficult with your peer. But there are laws and some legislation that is being considered in order to protect certain protected classes. Whether or not they're going to make that rise to a civil rights violation or not, it remains to be seen. But that is a very good question. And if you are a protected class, you can explore those rights and see if in a specific case whether or not your particular circumstance falls underneath that act. But for the most part, that's something that's kind of in the works.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alexis McNall, and I'm a 12th grader at Northside High School. My question is, how often are bullies prosecuted?
Bullies are only prosecuted when their actions rise to the level of a crime. Unfortunately, and I can say as a person who grew up here in Columbus, back you had in the 80s and the 90s, we all dealt with bullying in some shape, form, or fashion. You know, you were teased, that's now considered bullying. Unfortunately, that is not a crime. We can't bring someone, we can't prosecute them or detain them because they're teasing. And at one point there was this train of thought that it kind of, toughened you up and you didn't really have a good rite of passage or didn't make it into adulthood unless you were bullied or teased a little bit. And so you do have that train of thought, and that is not a crime. But when there's a threat that, I'm going to tease you, and guess what? I'm going to punch you next time I see you, or I put my hands on you, then it rises to a level of a crime, and that is in our office, always prosecuted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lily West. I'm a 10th grader at Columbus High School, and I was just curious about how you would go to handle cases where the bully has a mental illness.
Very good questions. You guys are smart. We have a lot of protections under the juvenile code for juveniles. And one of them really, it encompasses the mental capacity of a juvenile. If we see there is some level of mental illness, depending on how the range, because it's on a case-by-case basis. If you're just talking about general behavioral, I guess, problems, we can do counseling, we can monitor the kid, because one of the good things about juvenile court, unlike adult court, is that we have a rehabilitation component. So we can put that child into what we call programs, counseling programs and things like that. Now, if there's a severe mental capacity, we have some more extensive programs that we can put the child in, and we can't prosecute. If it's very severe, we cannot prosecute. But we can put in protections for the victims, because that's the thing. As far as the DA's office, we have to protect the community regardless of what mental problems the offender may be facing, and so or the problems that offender may have. And so we have stay-away orders and things of that nature to ensure that that offender does not come in contact with the victim. But at the same token, we do, and we even have not something a little less than detention, where we put the offender into programs such as homes for the child to go live in order to not have any contact with the victim.
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Abria Roberts. I'm in the 9th grade at Shaw High School. And my question is, what would the police officers do if bullying was reported to the law enforcement?
I guess that would be a question for me. Well, first of all, what we would have to do, I know I would ask the child, have you spoke with your counselor, or have you spoke with your teacher about this incident here? What steps have you taken to address this issue? Because most of the time in our school system, we try to let the administration handle that. However, if we witness a crime, like I said, we have to address that crime. So I guess what I would say is I would definitely take you to the counselor and make a report there and give you some instructions on as far as speaking with your parents and things like that. And most likely, we probably would talk to the aggressor as well and explain that that behavior is not wanted here, and let them know the dangers of that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Good question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Kennedy, and I'm Kennedy, and I'm in the 8th grade, and I come from Rainy McCullers School of the Arts. And my question is, how come kids that are being bullied like to bully other people, even though they know how it is?
Great question. And that gets into the psychology of bullying. Oftentimes we tend to model behavior that we see, and sometimes we do find students who may witness, bully type behavior or abusive behavior at home, and in terms they will become the aggressor themselves. So it's what I know and what I'm comfortable with, and that's how I know how to handle situations. And so it becomes a modeling episode instead of getting the help and recognizing. And a lot of times we call them bullies, but a lot of times bullies don't know that they're actually bullies. And so it's making sure that we, as the school district, we have a clear understanding of what the term is. And we also, like we mentioned before, we work on building a culture of kindness. But oftentimes the psychology of bullying is if I see it, I actually become it.
And I'm going to throw in here right quick the definition of bullying. I'm not sure everybody knows it because a lot of people do not know what bullying really is. So this is just the Webster Dictionary. Use superior strength or influence to intimidate someone, typically to force him or her to do what one wants. Somebody wants power over you. Nobody can have power over you unless you allow them. When you are being bullied, you do not beg them to stop. They will continue because you have given them power. Stand up. No. Don't fight, though. Do not fight, because then you'll go to you. But don't give the power. Don't beg. Don't let somebody have power over you. If somebody says, and I wish we could role play a few things even, but if somebody says, you know, I don't like you, your hair is ugly, well, thank you. Thank you. Kindness. Kill them with kindness. That's how you stop a bully.
Thank you.
And I do want to just kind of piggyback. Many of you have received, and you've seen this booklet I have here. Yes, everyone's shaking their head, yes. This is a handbook that comes home every single year, and your parents sign off that they've received it and they've read it. Within this handbook, there's a ton of information for you to protect yourself, but also to know what the legal definition of bullying, as well as what the consequences are. So it's in black and white for you, and we do have it on the website. We have it in many, many different places for you as the leaders in your buildings to make sure that you are aware of it, but you're also you're notifying your friends.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Alexis Hammond, and I go to Aaron Cohn, and I'm in sixth grade. And my question is, if I see a friend getting bullied or I'm getting bullied, how can I stand up to that bully?
Did y'all hear the question? Yes. Okay.
How can you stand up to the bully?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, first and foremost, like she mentioned, please don't retaliate. We don't fight fire with fire, so to speak. Make sure you can walk away. That's best thing to do is walk away and quickly find a trusted adult to share what your concerns are. Because once we get into a situation where it's a tit for tat, you're going back and forth, then then that person has pulled you into the situation, and then you lose your power, which means your self-esteem, your confidence, and your ability to handle the situation. So the best thing to do is to step away, make sure that you find a trusted adult in the building, whether it's a coach, a friend's parent, your parent, just someone that you can tell what's going on, so they can actually handle the situation for you.
Thank you.
And I'll add on that last year there were several instances of people were bullying, and everybody pulled out their cell phone and videotaped it and put it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. If you see somebody videotaping, get in front of the camera with your body and stop it. Would you want to be bullied and videoed and placed all on YouTube? No. It goes back to you. Your student body has to stand up.
Could I add here? There's a lesson that we talk about in the GREAT program. It talks about operating as a community. And guys, that's what we have to do. We all have a responsibility. When you claim a community, you have a responsibility. So what you have to do when you see something like that going on and you see your peer is experiencing something like that, we have to say something. You know, say something. You go talk to the counselor. You go comfort that friend, something of that nature, okay? You reach out, all right?
Yes, sir.
My name is Tyrese.
Let me get you to step up to the mic.
My name is Tyrese. I'm in 8th grade, and I go to Fort. But around how many students a year commit suicide due to bullying?
Well, as a form of, just to let you know, there is a new term that we use in counseling, and it's called bullycide. And it was actually developed because there was such a surge in the numbers of students as a result of being bullied that they completed suicide. But please keep in mind that it's not always a one-time act or it's just bullying. A lot of time it is linked to mental illness or depression, and bullying is a part of it. So bullying itself, alone, may not negate that someone is going to commit suicide or not, but is actually the mental illness or mental health concerns that we may have that's attached to it. But we do have quite a few students. I would say, just in the nation, we have seen, according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, that there has been a rise in suicide itself when it comes to just from the ages of 10 to 24. Now, we saw a decrease years ago, about 10 to 12 years ago, there was a decrease, but unfortunately, we are seeing an increase in the numbers. As of right now, anyone between the ages of 10 and 24 is the second and sometimes third leading cause of death amongst our students in the United States. And so it's important that we understand that suicide itself, it's horrible, but a lot of times it is linked to depression, it's linked to mental illness that's either treated or not treated, or not even a student's not even aware that they have such a condition.
And if I can piggyback, one of the questions about the mental illness, I couldn't remember residential programs that we have in juvenile court. And I am currently working on a case with a bully, and it was exploitation over the internet. And in fact, when the bully was reported, he or she, I'll just say that, threatened suicide. And we are in the process of recommending having what we call a behavioral health evaluation done on that particular person, and we are recommending residential in order to kind of prevent, so it's on both sides. Sometimes the person being bullied, but the bullier. We've had this situation where when they were called on the carpet, immediately went to suicidal ideation is what we call it. And so we have troubled youth that we kind of have to work on both ends. And so that is something to also consider. So sometimes it's not always the victim. Sometimes the person perpetrating the bullying has issues. And because they feel like they don't have that power, they can't exercise that power over the victim, they resort to something as drastic as suicidal threats.
Thank you.
And I want to add in, I did look at the CDC. The CDC recognizes that 4,400 people commit suicide yearly. And every one that commits it, 100 attempted. That's alarming.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Serenity Orozco. I am in 6th grade and I go to Eddy Middle School. My friend has been made fun of before. She told me, I immediately wanted to tell someone, but she told me not to. So I wrote a note and I did anyway.
Good for you. Great job.
Good for you.
My name is Tanner, and I go to Aaron Cone. I'm in the 8th grade. And my question is, what is the common age that you mostly see bullying at?
It's actually across the board, unfortunately. And when I say across the board, it can start as young as kindergarten. And some of the behaviors that we're seeing that were typically with older students, they are manifesting with younger ones too. We do have students that are in the 3rd grade that are at the alternative setting, unfortunately. So it can span from as young as elementary all the way up to high school. And sometimes it doesn't even stop there.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Fetua Mual, and I'm in the 6th grade in Baker Middle School. How does bullying lead to depression, anxiety, and stress?
Great question. I guess that's me. Great question. And it kind of links back to what we talked about with the depression and mental illness. Oftentimes when you're going through stressful situation, bullying, if you've ever experienced it, I know I have when I was in school, it is a stressful time. And a lot of times linked to that stress is anxiety. Anxiety is simply a fear of something. It could be a fear of going to school, which is sociophobia. It could be a fear of just crowds or fear of other individuals. So it can literally turn itself into different types of disorders if it's not checked and if it's not talked about soon enough. Also depression. You know, if I have lost the power, I don't want to go to school because my tummy aches. So it's not just the anxiety or the mental illness, but it's also physical. You know, if we're not careful, it can take on some physical ailments. So it's important to understand and know your body and know yourself and say, you know what, enough's enough, I need help. And you reach out to get that help, because the sooner we can address it and start the investigation process, the sooner we can start the healing.
Yes, sir.
Hello, I'm Daniel Nazario from Aaron Middle School in 6th grade. I have another question. So there's somebody at my school, and he gets bullied, but it's not like severe bullying. But I don't like seeing people suffer from bullying because I myself know what it feels like to be bullied. But I don't know what to do to help him except being physical with the other people.
Okay.
Physical part?
Okay, as far as retaliating, that's something you don't want to do. If anything, I would say what you need to do as a student, you actually need to speak with a responsible adult. That is your first course of action. And encourage your friend to also talk with the parent. And just don't be afraid to say something. A lot of children, they're like intimidated by the one that's doing the bullying. They're intimidated and they don't want to say anything. But you have to say something so that we, as staff members and your peers, could like protect you, if you will. Okay, so just don't be silent and just talk with someone. All right, report it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Gabriella Sanks, and I'm in the 5th grade. I go to Calvary Christian School. And my question is, what happens if there's something else going on at home, and that's why the bully is bullying you at school?
Okay, that's a very good question. So what I'm hearing is something is happening at the person's home, and they are the aggressor or the bully, and that's why they're acting out. And that happens, like we've talked about a second ago. People tend to model what's going on or what they see. And if they can't express themselves in the way they want to, you know, nurturing, and they're not receiving the nurturing and the loving environment, sometimes they do lash out when they get to the school setting because they have control, or they feel like they have control or power at the school. So if you know someone is going through a difficult time at home, it's important to tell the counselor to make sure if you have a coach or someone at school, because it may be that we can pull that student in, and if there's something that's going on at home, maybe physical abuse, then we can step in and call the Department of Family and Children's Services, who can then start an additional investigation. So we do have steps that we can do to protect that student.
We also have a component in juvenile court that will also address that. We have family functional therapy.
Yes.
And that's a little less than Department of Family and Children's Services. That if the bully has, again, his or her actions have risen to the level of a crime, and we see that there's some issues at home. In fact, they come out to the home. I think Georgia might have the most successful rate in juvenile court with it's either family functional therapy or functional family therapy. I get the F's mixed up. But it's very successful. They come into the home, they counsel with the youth, they counsel with the family, and they kind of address issues that may be going on within the home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Jo, and I'm a junior at Columbus High School. And my question is, what happens if you feel like you're being bullied by a teacher?
My teacher.
Wow.
Great question. There are procedures and steps. We take all bullying seriously. So if you do report to an administrator, the principal or a principal designee, which could be the counselor or assistant principal, that something's happening, the same steps will follow. We will investigate, we will notify your parents of your concerns, and we will also, if there's any disciplinary actions that need to be against that teacher, that will happen through Human Resource Department. But if the principal is the bully, and you can't necessarily go to the person who's bullying you that you feel, then we have steps. We have a regional chief, and a regional chief within each, in school, there's one assigned to each school. You can make that report to that person. The next step, if you can't get to the regional chief, then definitely talk to your counselor, or you and your parent can come down to the Division of Student Services that's located at the Public Education Center, and we have what we call an investigation report, and you will write down in detail, and then we will step in as the Student Services Department and do the investigation from our end. So there is definitely protection for students against administrators and teachers.
I'll also add, if you think a teacher or a staff member is bullying you, write it down, date it and time it, and take it to your parents. That way, when it happens, if you do it right then, it's fresh on your mind what was said, so you actually can remember it instead of coming back 2 or 3 hours later when you get home. You actually have it written down. This is what Mrs. Jones said, or whatever. And that way it's fresh. And try to date it and time it, because the paper trail is the best thing that you can have too, to support you.
I concur. Yeah, very good advice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jada Archibald, and I'm a 10th grader at Carver High School. And why does everyone comment on a social media thread get in trouble?
We didn't hear the last part of the question.
Why does everyone comment on a social media thread get in trouble? Like, say, like, somebody has, like, a exposed page, you comment just, like, LOL or something.
Well, I do know.
Say.
As far as on the criminal level, where we have exploitation, child pornography, it is a felony, and each time that person shares it or sends it out, each one is a separate count. Each is a felony. Now, I'm not sure about a thread and someone commenting. I'm not sure about that. But I do know that we've had instances, and all of you are living in a different era as far as this internet. It's very dangerous when you're at a slumber party and one of your peers is getting dressed and you want to take a naked picture of them and you think it's funny. Time you post it on Facebook, Instagram, you've committed a felony. You've committed a crime. You're facing upwards of 60 days in jail, detention. Juvenile RYDC, the Regional Youth Detention Center, for doing that act. And each time you send it out, it's a different felony, it's a different count. And so I would warn you about that. Now, as far as the comments, I'm not quite sure about that.
My colleague right here, Officer Broussard, she would like to comment on that as well.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to add that one of the reasons you may get in trouble for commenting is because if you see something, you see someone's being bullied, and you choose to not tell an adult you trust, but you add on to it, you could be helping to endanger the person who's being bullied. So rather than comment, if you see something negative going on, it's best to reach out in a way that's positive, in a way that you can help. That may be one of the reasons why you get in trouble when you make comments that are derogatory.
And within the school system, and please keep in mind, if it comes to the school setting at any time, if a student brings their cell phone or brings a post and you are a part of that post, you now have become a part of the investigation. And so what we want to keep clear is that cyberbullying, although you may be at home, you may be at a friend's house, but as soon as that information gets into the school setting, which means it interrupts the school educational process, then we get involved, and which means we're going to look at everyone that's in that link and what they're saying, and then we're going to investigate accordingly.
And I'll just add to that now that I get a clearer picture as to your question. We do have in the criminal arena parties to a crime if you aid, abet, or encourage. And so criminally, if you're saying, yeah, do it again, or that's great, you know, take another picture, or if you're doing something to aid, abet, or encourage that crime, you are just as culpable as the person who, I guess, initially made the post, and you can be prosecuted as well as a party to that crime.
And I'm sorry, as a preventive measure, and many of you are probably so used to the bully prevention lessons that are going on in your schools, and one of them is called, we have to do 3 times a year, it's called CIPA, which is Children Internet Protection Act. These 3 lessons that you learn about how to be a good digital citizen. And during those lessons is when we address really hard cyberbullying and what the consequences are to cyberbullying.
In some states, parents are even going to jail because their children are bullying, and certain things are going on. Georgia's not doing that right now, but they are have modified their legislation under cyberbullying and everything, and we are, as under Columbus Against Bullying, we are looking at legislation, and we're looking at policies, procedures that we have now, what's being utilized, what's not being utilized, and what we need to tweak. We're not going to ask anybody to put legislation out to put our parents in jail, but you have to know that some states are doing that. And if it comes to enough in Georgia one day, we might see that. So people need to watch out what they're doing, because it is going to go back. Because right now, as the law stands, I believe it is, if you do something as a minor, your parents are responsible for it on, you know, property damage and that type stuff.
Yes.
Well,
The children toward
eventually, the law may be, if you're bullied and somebody does something and they damage, then you can be civilly sued, I believe.
Yes.
Against that.
It's the Parental Control Against Children's Tort Act. And also to piggyback on what you're saying, it's actually in New York that they are now prosecuting parents. I think the first offense is $250. This is for repeat offenders, repeat bully, people who repeatedly bully. And if the child bullies, again, within 90 days, that parent faces 15 days in jail. And so they've just passed that in a certain part of New York.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. So I was wondering, you know, obviously bullying is hard on anyone's self-esteem. So what's your advice to students who are being bullied on regaining their self-esteem?
Great question. We have many organizations and clubs that are at your schools now. Some of you have peer helpers. Some of you you have student to student, and I see you're nodding your heads, student to student. There's also Students Against Destructive Decisions, many organizations that are on your campus, and there's a lot of times they are ran by your school counselor. And within those clubs and organizations, that's what they focus on, is building self-esteem, is loving yourself enough to know that whatever someone says about me, I know it's not true. So therefore, you know, I will do whatever steps necessary to make it stop. But at the end of the day, I still have my self-esteem intact. There's, I know Carver has started a new girls group. There's some organizations out there called Boys to Men. So please make sure that you know what's in your schools. The counselors can actually start the counseling groups. So if you're interested in a group starting on self-esteem, they can actually initiate that for you as an intervention method and prevention. But one of the things that's really important is to understand that we are building a positive culture. And what we're focusing on something that's called PBIS within our district. Some of you are a part of a PBIS school. Our goal is to make every school within Muskogee County a positive behavior intervention support school. And what that means is that we are focusing on positive behavior. We understand that when we come into this world, We spend a lot of time teaching children how to tie their shoes, how to ride a bike, but we don't focus a lot of times on how to build their self-esteem. We don't focus on how to teach them positive behavior. So that's what the PBIS program in your schools is, building an entire culture of positivity, kindness, consideration of others, making sure we respect those who are different than ourselves, but most importantly, that we love ourselves first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Eric Callen. I go to Veterans Middle School, and I just want to know how common is bullying and what can kids do to prevent bullying?
One of the themes that we've talked about on the panel is speak up. If you see bullying, find a trusted adult and speak up to stop bullying. I think this youth today should make it uncool. One of the things that you see a lot of on YouTube is taking a picture or video of the bullying and all the snickering. If the masses or the public or the general population put up a front and say, hey, look, we will no longer accept this, it will stop. Because the person who's doing the bullying, they want the power, they want the attention. I have a friend who's an administrator in the Atlanta metro area, and there was a person who was in and out of juvenile court, was a textbook person who loved to bully, and would just do all this outlandish stuff. And that person brought inappropriate pictures of themselves to the cafeteria table with the group that he or she was trying to impress. And literally all the kids just kind of threw it to the side and said whatever and kept talking. That stopped that person no longer bullied. He no longer cut up. He didn't get the reaction. And if we can get the general population to stop reacting and stop giving over the power to the person who's doing the bullying, I think it would curtail tremendously, if not fully stop.
And I would just like to add that as adults, we realize that speaking out is not easy at any age. And so it's very important for you all to realize, for all youth to realize that you are the ears, the eyes, and the mouth of your school. You already have the power. But it's important for you to claim that power and to make sure that when you notice something going on, if it's not right, if you notice a peer who's being picked on, say something. If you're not the kind of person who can just stand up in the classroom or stand up right there and say something, go to a trusted adult in confidence and private and just let them know what your concern is. But it's very important for you to realize that we never know what's going on until you tell us.
That's true.
So please, please speak out. That's your most powerful tool.
And I just want to add, I myself have a son who's in middle school, and his first introduction to middle school, the second day of school, he was bullied. And as a parent who talks about bullying all the time, I was heartbroken, but I was really proud of him because he spoke up. He went to the counselor and told the counselor what was going on in the cafeteria, is where it happened, told the person what was going on. But the counselor was really proud of him and asked him, you know, they were talking about you. How are you okay with this? And he said, you know what? I have a no-stick anointing, is what he calls it. So whatever you say to me just slides right off. And that has stuck with him, and he, to this day, he's just made president of the student council. To this day, his peers are really proud of him for what he's done, and he's stood up and he's become an example of what to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our last question of the day. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Amber Deal. I go to Columbus High School and I'm a 10th grader. And my question is, since verbal bullying is not a crime, what is being done to stop it, and what are the consequences, or what is the greatest consequence of verbal bullying?
Within the school district, it is against policy. It is against what we stand by. It is actually written into law, so it is considered a It's verbal, physical, cyberbullying. So we do take verbal bullying just as serious as we do physical or any other type of bullying. So the same steps would apply.
I do have one more question. At least Ms. Jenkins wanted to know about gangs and the bullying, if you want to speak on that.
Unfortunately, there is a problem in the school system with gangs. So one of the ways that we are trying to tackle that problem is by speaking with the students, by letting them know that gangs are not welcome in the school. And if there is something noticed, if we notice that gangs are being represented in the school, if students feel like they're being targeted or bullied by anyone, then we take that very seriously. And those students are dealt with accordingly. Of course, we have to take into consideration their age, but those students are dealt with.
And as far as criminal gang activity in the juvenile system, that is a 5-year offense. It's called a Class A designated felony. They're hard to prosecute because you have to show, if you have a lone actor, you have to show that they were doing it in order to either join a gang, impress a gang, or move up in a gang. And that we have to bring in experts and that sort of thing. So it's a high threshold to meet, but once it's met, that juvenile faces 5 years, and I will tell you, the judges in our circuit will not hesitate to give them that 5 years straight out the blocks. So just so you are aware. And so as far as trying to impress and I guess following the wrong path, I would definitely encourage not joining a gang. And sometimes that's a symptom of a lack of guidance, sometimes, not all the time, but in the home. And so it's a bigger problem, but just so you're aware.
Okay, looks like we've come to an end of our program. We would like to thank each one of our panelists and Columbus Against Bullying for a great show. Thank you for tuning in to CCG TV and the Youth Advisory Council's annual talk show. Thank you.